Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the third round of the Blitz Fuel Invitational Tournament being held in New York City. Now, the famous YouTuber and aspiring Grandmaster candidate Levy is playing in this event. He's gotten off to a very tough start. He drew in the first round from a winning position. In the second round, he suffered a tough loss against the very talented 13-year-old junior player Ryan Sun. And now in the third game, he's playing with the black pieces against Rose Atwell, who herself is a very accomplished player. She was over 2,300 FIDE earlier this year. She played in the U.S. Women's Championship, someone who can be very dangerous. So Levy's playing with the black pieces in the third round, and let's see if he can start winning some games. So the game starts out with the move d4. Levy plays knight f6. We get c4, e6, and now we get the move g3. Now this, of course, is the classic Catalan system. I mentioned that Levy has played this from the white side. It's one of the most solid systems that white can play, and in general, it's very hard to deal with when you're trying to get a win with the black pieces. So we get the move d5. We get bishop g2 being played. Levy goes bishop b4, bishop d2, and now we get the move bishop e7. Here, Rose plays knight f3. We get castles, and Levy plays move c6. Now, you may be wondering, why did Levy play bishop b4 and then bishop back to e7? Now, the reason for that is that if we go back to this position right here on move number 4, if black plays bishop e7, knight f3, castles, white can potentially play the move b3 after c6. And if white gets the bishop to b2, the bishop is better placed on this diagonal than it is on d2. Now, of course, in this position after c6, white can try to put the bishop on c3 and play b3, but once again, the bishop on c3 a little bit looser than the bishop being on b2 because of the move knight to e4 targeting the bishop. So back to the game. We get the move queen c2, and here Levy plays the move knight bd7, and now Rose plays the move b3. Levy plays knight e4, and here we get this move bishop f4, and now Levy plays f5. Now, what Levy has done here is he's created the classic Dutch or stonewall structure with these pawns on c6, d5, e6, and f5. Here, the 4 pawns combined with the knight in the center of the board to try to go after the white position. Now, in a game some years back, I believe it was the 2017 United States Chess Championship, I had a very similar position against none other than Wesley So, where I believe the game continued with g5, bishop c1, f5, knight c3, and here I played the move b6 if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, after f5, Rose plays the move h4, and this is a move that struck me as a shocking move from a positional standpoint because black's idea in this position is to push b, try to be aggressive on the king side, sample line, knight c3, g5, bishop e3, and bishop f6 here, and now you're trying to maybe go f4, maybe h5, h4, you have the bishop on a nice diagonal, and when you play the move h4 here, you're not actually stopping black from going h6 and g5. Now, what I suspect happened from Rose's standpoint is probably she's looked at a lot of different Catalan lines, and there are some lines in the Catalan where you do push your h pawn to h4 to try and stop black from going g5 and expanding on the king side, but this is not one of those lines. So we get the move h6 from Levy. Rose plays knight c3, Levy goes g5, and now we get the move pawn takes, and bishop to e3. Levy plays move bishop to f6, and shockingly this move is actually a mistake here. The reason being that what Levy should have done is played the move rook to f7, and after say rook d1 he can go rook to h7, and already here it's getting quite dangerous for white because black can go for queen e8 and queen h5 to try and checkmate on the open h5. This is also why playing h4 is a move that I don't like, because just looking at this position after g5 bishop c1, you still have the pawns as well as the fianchetto bishop on g2 around the king on g1, and white should be doing completely fine. So for that reason, in this position, I was a little bit surprised that we got this line, but after we get takes, bishop e3, Levy plays move bishop f6 instead. Now, the reason this move is imprecise is now after we get the move rook a to d1 here, if Levy tries to play rook to f7, going for the same idea with rook h7, queen to e8, and queen h5, now white can play the move knight to e5 here, jumping with the knight to the center of the board, and if you try to trade the knights and take the pawn here, now with the rook on d1 after takes and bishop takes e4, white is actually a little bit better because the king is well protected by the pawns, and black's king has the lone pawn on g5 in front of it. So Levy plays queen e7, a move that I love in this position. You dodge any of the knight e5 ideas, because if we get this position, now after takes, your queen is no longer on the d file, and black is simply up a pawn. So Rose decides to play knight takes knight. Levy correctly captures with the D pawn. The reason this is the best capture is if you take towards the center with the F pawn, normally you would think capture towards the center when you're creating double pawns, but here it's imprecise because after knight to H2, let's just say you play a move like B6 to bring your bishop and rook into the game, white can play F3, destroying your big black center, and after takes and a move like bishop F3, suddenly white has queen G6, there's knight G4, and white is actually the one attacking the black king on G8. So Levy captures with a D pawn, we get to move knight to E1, and surprisingly this move is actually a big mistake here. Now the reason might not be obvious at first glance why this is a mistake, but knight to H2 is actually a lot better, and we're about to see why. So after knight to E1, Levy goes E5, we get this move D5, Levy trades, and here Levy makes a big mistake when he plays this move B6. Now we'll obviously hear from Levy in terms of why he didn't play the move that I would recommend here, which is queen to H7, but the reason this is so strong for black after queen to H7 here is that black has a very simple idea of moving the king and double stacking on the H file with rook H8 followed by queen to H2 checkmate. So out of nowhere, black can line up the double stack and checkmate the white king, and white can't do a whole lot about it. Now this is why the knight on H2 actually would be a lot better, because if you go for the same idea with queen H7 here, white can play F3, but even if we get something like this, for example, let's say rook D2 and king G7, here white can say trade, play a move like rook to D1, and after rook, I guess let's just ignore that there's rook takes D7, even knight to F1, and the white king is actually completely safe here as black cannot checkmate on the H file. But when you put this knight on E1 here, now you're not covering H2. It's a big sore spot. Also, the knight on E1 is stuck. The pawn dominates the horse. There are no squares available. And at this point, it's actually quite dangerous to play for white. Levy ends up playing the move B6, and this is a move that is simply too slow, and I suspect that Levy was probably a little bit tilted during this game because this is a move which allows white to go for a very thematic idea here. Now, the other move besides queen H7 that I thought maybe would make sense is to play the move G4 here, because after G4, white cannot easily break up the pawn structure. There is this move F3, which is playable perhaps, but in general, G4 would prevent the idea that white wants to go for. We get B6, and now Rose plays move G4, which breaks up the pawn chain. White's going to open up the diagonals, and as you guys can tell from the evaluation bar, this is already a serious problem for Levy to deal with. So Levy goes F4, logical move, but now Rose plays the move D6, rook guards the pawn, you attack the queen, Levy plays queen E8, and now after bishop takes E4, you're simply down a pawn in the center of the board, your rook is under attack, and already here, as you can tell from the evaluation bar, Levy is in dire straits. So Levy goes rook to B8. Now Rose plays the move bishop to C1, and here Levy goes knight C5, trying to attack the bishop and the pawn at the same time. Rose plays bishop D5, which is a slight mistake. We get king G7. Computer, by the way, for anyone who's wondering, would prefer bishop G6 here. And after queen D7, F3, the bishop is a little bit better on this diagonal versus being on this diagonal with F3, because the bishop is a wooden shield here. But you will notice it is staring at a lot of empty squares. But we get this position after F3, and here Levy plays the move queen D7, and this is a double question mark move, after which it's going to be very difficult for Levy to recover. Now, amazingly, the computer here is screaming for Levy to play rook to H8, claiming this open H file. Frankly, if Levy had played this move, I think there are very decent chances that he could have at least drawn this game, if not won it, because the computer here recommends the move king G2. If you play the move B4, which is a very logical human move, black can actually go rook H3, sacking the knight. And if you take the knight here, now after queen to H8, knight to G2, and this move rook H2, black is apparently doing quite well here after king to F2, and the move queen to H4. So, with the queen infiltrating on H3, H4, the weak king on G1, at this point, Levy would have great chance to win the game. And this is why I think if Levy had played rook H8, it would have been the best chance. Of course, it's very difficult. It's easy from the sidelines to be like, oh, you should play this, you should play that, and all this other stuff. But I think that when we look at this position in general, it was already time for Levy to go into desperado mode. But I think he thought that he's only down a pawn. You can kind of try to defend the position. And so he plays the move queen D7. Now, there are many reasons this move is a very big mistake here, but probably the biggest simple way I would explain it is that in general, when your opponent has a passed pawn, the best pieces to blockade a passed pawn with are a knight or a bishop. Actually, in Levy's previous game against Ryan's son, he had a pawn on D5 and there was a knight on D6. So the general theme or rule is that you want to blockade passed pawns with a knight or a bishop, but blockading with a queen is actually the absolute worst piece to blockade with. Also because now the queen becomes a passive bystander and you can't easily try to stack on the H file here. So now Rose plays the move b4. Levy decides to play this move knight to e6, and now we get the move bishop c6. Levy goes queen f7, we get d7, bishop b7, and here Rose Atwell plays the move b5, locking this bishop on c6 here, where it's protected by the pawn on b5. And if black ever trades the bishops, after pawn takes bishop, white has two connected pawns rolling up the board, and white is completely winning. So after b5, Levy goes knight to d4 here, and Rose decides to sack the rook. With rook takes knight, we get pawn takes rook, and now we have the move queen to e4 being played. Now you're probably thinking Levy is up a rook here. He's up a rook for a knight in this position. However, the big issue for Levy here is that white has his passed pawn. The bishop on b7 is poorly placed. But even more importantly, beyond that, the rooks have no open files. You can put the rook on h8, but this rook on b8 has no oxygen. When you have a rook for a knight, the general imbalance of the exchange, so to speak, you generally need open files for the rooks to use, and Levy doesn't have that. So Levy plays the move rook d8. He obviously does not trade the bishops because now these pawns are really menacing. They're 2 squares away from queening, and white's winning. And if you go for the move bishop to a8, now white can simply play the move knight to d3 here, ignoring everything. And this bishop is very sad. You don't ever want to trade on c6, and white should be completely winning. So Levy goes rook d8 instead. This is sort of a desperation move. He sacks the bishop here, and in return, he's hoping that he's going to be able to activate his rooks on the open e file as well as the open h file. So after we get rook to h8 being played, Rose Atwell plays the move rook to f2. A nice move here because Levy's big idea is he wants to stack on the h file. So you get rook f2, Levy plays rook h6, and now we get the move knight d3. Levy plays queen to g8, trying to go for queen h7 or queen h8, but now Rose plays the move rook to h2, eliminating one set of rooks here. And now with this rook on e7, unable to transfer over to the h file, Levy is completely lost. So we get takes. Levy plays queen h7, we get king g2, and now he plays the move queen h4. Now, it looks like for a brief second that Levy is infiltrating with the queen. He's going to save the game, even though he's down a rook for a bishop and a knight. But unfortunately, Rose finds the move knight to f2. And this is a move that basically ends the game here, because with the knight on f2, this knight stops all infiltration. Now, after queen g3 and king to f1 is played, if Levy tries to go queen h4, the knight covers the checks on h3 and h1. King is always guarding the knight. So effectively, once we get to this point, this knight stops any ideas of attacking on the h file. And as such, white will now have a free hand to use the 2 b's and the queen to start infiltrating and attacking the black king on g7. So Levy plays the move rook to e5, and now Rose goes bishop to b2, trying to attack the pawn on d4. And here, Levy plays rook c5. We get the move queen to e4, attacking the pawn on d4, and now Levy plays queen h4. As you can tell here, Levy is trying desperately to infiltrate, but the knight covers all the squares on the h file. It covers h1 and h3. The bishop covers c1, and with the queen coming to e6 or e8 combined with the light square bishop is just GG. Why not? So we get queen to h4 from Levy. Rose Atwell plays queen to e6, and now Levy plays the move rook c2. Now at this point, Levy could already resign. I don't blame him for playing on, but it's all but hopeless. We get rook c2, check king h8, queen e8 check, king g7, and now Rose plays the move bishop to e4, attacking the rook, but more importantly, threatening the move queen to g6, checking the king and winning the bishop on f6. Here, Levy plays rook takes bishop. We get queen g6, king f8, takes, king g8. If Levy were to go king e8, there's bishop c6 checkmate. So he goes king to g8, and now Rose plays check, king h7, queen f7. And at this point, Levy decides to resign the game here, because if he goes king to h8, there's queen g8, checkmate in Uno. And if he goes king to h6, white checks on f8, doesn't matter. You go to h7, it's checkmate. Go to g6, it's also checkmate. The queen and the bishop cover all the critical squares, and white will win the game. So a very, very tough loss here for Levy in this third round of the Blitzfuel Invitational. What I would say about this game is it's very clear that Levy is struggling at this point. He's having a bad event, and it's just not going very, very well. Now, also, you might have noticed that Levy made some comments earlier in his second game recap on his channel. Something about me roasting him for 4 hours. All that I can say are a couple of things. First of all, Levy is struggling. He's having a very difficult event. He's playing players who are very strong. Obviously, he's having to deal with a lot of negativity, comments on the internet. I suspect some trolls probably sent these clips or messages or whatever, which led to this. But having played chess professionally for so many years, I know the feeling when you're not doing well, anything can trigger you and set you off. So I do feel very bad for Levy. I do think that in general, when you're playing in serious chess tournaments, you really do need to avoid social media. I cannot stress it enough that in between games, if it's after the round, end of the day, maybe you can look some, but in general, if you're playing 2 games a day, or you have to be focused, you should be ignoring social media as much as you can, because it can only serve as a distraction. There is no upside and only massive downside. So I'm not really sure, what's going on with Levy in this event. He's obviously struggling a lot. It's very difficult to watch. We are rooting for him to do well in this event. So it's not great to see. But on the other hand, for Rose Atwell, she is a very talented player who is improving. I think she's a little bit underrated at the moment, and she did play a pretty clean game. Other than maybe the 191 move, it's hard to critique her play that much. I mean, for Levy, if he doesn't play b6, he has more confidence. It goes for queen h7 type ideas. He probably wins this game. But alas, it simply was not meant to be for Levy. So, difficult event, difficult first 3 rounds. There's still 6 more games. I have no doubt that Levy will probably find a way to rebound. He'll get a nice one here or there, and that might jumpstart him in this event. But at least right now, it's simply not going his way. So, on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 3rd round of the Blitzfuel Invitational being held in New York City. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more recaps. Hopefully, Levy can put it together and get some nice wins tomorrow, and I will see all of you guys then. So I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your evening. See you guys. Bye.